Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Good day, good morning, good weekend, good morrow,
G'day.
And good night. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Hal Sparks radio program, Megaworldwide. We're live in the hometown of Chicago, even though currently Johnny Million and I are both not there. It's heartbreaking. I know. I feel like there's always a moment where we're kind of I get my attachment to Chicago emotionally and cellular attachment that I have to Chicago because you're there. But no, where you're obviously in an undisclosed location.
In the city of brotherly love.
San Francisco?
That's right.
Oh, no, sorry.
Naperville,
Nashville,
Illinois.
Tennessee? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Different kind of cousinly love. That's right. Sorry, Nashville is cousinly love. You're in
Philly with Mrs. Million at a library convention.
It's a great place to have one. You know why? Because the Pennsylvania Grand Lodge of Freemasonry is in downtown Philly, and public libraries are one of the things brought to you by your local Freemason. That's right. They pushed for them during the creation of the country. It was a direct affront to the king himself, and the idea that the democratization of intellectual property to some degree should be available to everyone. So a public library would be a necessary part.
We do not need an educated public, Hal.
A little learning is a dangerous thing. That's what your tramp stamp says, right? A little learning is a dangerous thing.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It's a
yeah.
very large font too.
Mine just says you're welcome. Because I like to be polite.
Into the crack.
Yeah, if in all seriousness, if you've ever been to the Grand Lodge that's there, it's pretty spectacular. And right out in front of it is a giant statue of Ben Franklin handing George Washington his Masonic apron. And inside there's the biggest statue of Ben Franklin. Yeah, there's a big statue of Ben Franklin inside there in the ballroom, and it's like 15 feet high. It's kind of amazing. I love Philadelphia. One of my favorite comedy clubs in the whole world is there. Helium Comedy Club in downtown Philadelphia. Yeah. And I have to say, it's in the old cobblestone street area of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So it's a lovely walk around. There's a comic book store like 5 doors up from it. So I had a nice little circle when I would be in town of things I could do and see, and they were all go to at my hotel, walk to the club, go to the comic book store. There was a gelato place on the corner if you felt like something. It's nice. The club is style-wise, it's awesome. Materially terrible. Half the audience can't see you because the stage is inset behind some curtains. So you have to do it like your entire show on the lip. Otherwise, no one can see you. If you're physical at all, you're doomed. But it's still great audiences. They're very smart. It's very historically aware crowds will come to Helium because of Philadelphia being where liberty was in many ways born, and where I'm sure Donald Trump thinks of, not just because of the black population, thinks of Philadelphia as the bane of his existence because of all the things that Republicans would like to undo in the rights and privileges that one would get of being an American citizen. And we saw yesterday. Now, I am on the, let's see. I'm not on the panic train anyways, most of the time. You know this about me. Because on the one hand, I sort of subscribe to that old Chinese parable about the guy who's, somebody gifted him a horse and everybody in town went, "That's amazing." And he was like, "We'll see." And then the guy, everybody in town was like, "You get a free horse? This guy gave you a horse. It's amazing." And he's like, "Yeah, we'll see." And then his son riding the horse falls off and breaks his leg. And the whole town was like, "That's terrible. How unfortunate. Your son, your oldest living son, he broke his leg and he can't walk and he's going to be crippled." And he's like, "We'll see." And then the army came through and took all the able-bodied boys away and his son was spared. So the idea was that you can't really read on what's occurring. You can't guarantee the outcome. And Trump and his people, by the way, are very keen to have you guys believe that they are getting nothing but W's everywhere, because that has to be the story. And, you know, there was a phrase that kept coming up, you know, don't comply in advance. Right? We saw a bunch of that, don't comply in advance, when Trump and his ilk came in. And I would like to remind everybody that believing the hype that they're selling about what they're accomplishing and what it's going to mean in terms of how powerful they are, or how powerful they are going to be, or the powers that the Supreme Court will be giving him now and what he will be able to do with them and all that, focusing on getting people elected who will push back against that and filling basically the stands with Democrats, which is the only recourse we have against this, is volume.
Yep.
Honestly, it is a numbers game for the next 3 election cycles minimum. But that when that phrase came out, don't comply in advance, worrying about it, also anything outside the realm of your locus of control, the things you can actually do anything about, is a way of complying in advance, and it's buying into the narrative that they want to sell. And that's actually all Trump needs a lot of times from the people around him, is that they buy into the narrative. He needs people to buy into the idea that he's winning. This is working. All this stuff is perfect. You know, I got to tell you, kids, it ain't. It is not. There are still a lot of really rambunctious rules on the books that are keeping him curtailed. One of them being the Senate rules about what qualifies as something you can pass with reconciliation and something that you can't. And for all this stuff about we're going to fire the parliamentarian and all this, there are still Republicans in there who want to have a career after Trump is gone, who know that if they get rid of a lot of these things, and we will talk about the SCOTUS ruling, if they get rid of the parliamentary rules about what needs 60 votes and what needs a simple majority, when Democrats get in, and they are this idea that they're going to use Trump to get rid of all elections, is silliness on a bunch of fronts, because you have to rely on the ego of some sort of like chosen path amongst Republicans, and there are a bunch of Republicans who have aims on power that know they are not going to be in the Pez dispenser of maggot leaders, so they need to run. The John Thunes of the world are not going to be chosen because of their height by MAGA to be the successor. They're going to pick somebody, moronic and firebrandy, or, Matt Gaetz or Eric. Like that's the way their brain works. If it was up to them and they were doing picking Xi Jinping's successor or Putin's successor, and they were like, we just put the person we want right behind, or Kim Jong-un or whatever, like, where it's a familial or ideological lineage.
Lineage,
which has got to be, if you're Tom Brokaw, had to be one of the, illegal lineage would have been just brutal. Illegal lineage. That these, that those guys. I think he turned a weakness into a strength.
Sure.
But you have to understand, the people around Trump who know that they're not going to be the automatic pick for a myriad of reasons need there to be real elections. And as much as they might be happy to take on some support from outside their party, be it the Elon Musks of the world, there's still a rift that is occurring in maggot world that is not going to change. I want you guys to know that. I want you to know that this maggot riff about Iran, about bombing Iran, or about the implications of tariffs, or even, and we'll get to this after the next break, the Medicaid cuts in the big budget busting bill, that riff is here to stay. And if it passes, if they manage to shovel this through, the damage that will be done to red states will be brutal. And they know it. And that's why you have people like Josh Hawley sounding like Democrats when they're in committee all of a sudden when it comes to Medicaid and Medicare cuts. This is a crucial thing, that believing that Trump has these powers in many ways gives people the illusion that, well, okay, just next, we'll move on to the next problem, the next crisis that he throws in front of us. Right. Because the assumption is he's won that and, maybe we can win on the next one. That is not what is happening. And it's crucial that people recognize that even when it comes to this SCOTUS reading, and we'll talk about it after the break, and the rules about the big budget busting bill that he's putting in, there are real world ramifications that Republicans are aware of. And many of them in what would be purplish districts or purple leaning states, and those do exist, kids, and we got work to do there. They're aware that they are going to be on the chopping block if this stuff happens. And it might be, the Senate is worried more about it than the House is, because the House has to run every 2 years so they can sell a line of BS. But the Republicans in the Senate know that half of them know that by the next time we come around to their time to defend their seat, the ramifications of these cuts are going to be very stark and very obvious. You're going to see the impact. You might not see them, some of them, in time. You're not going to see inflation be fixed by midterms, but you might not see the Medicaid cuts really making, damaging people in that cycle. But you damn sure will on the next round for the Senate and in the presidential year, and they're aware of this. There's another thing about executive orders that we will also talk about. All these are crucial. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, from Philly, from LA. We are truly Mega Worldwide. And don't forget to subscribe at infotainmentwars.com. And Hal Vickery, oh my God, thank you for the super chat. Robert Brunswick, thank you so much. And Hazy Trip and Daisy, thank you so much. We'll be back right after this. Hal Vickery, I was out of town last week. I missed you. Did I miss anything going on in the country? Yeah.
Nah. Yeah, you're good.
So let me see if I can open this up. Dear God, man.
Dear God.
Dear God, man.
Singular sensation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Back in 20 seconds.
Today?
Thank you. Beg your pardon?
We have Phil today.
Yes, we do.
Yay.
Also, I have to do a little recording with you. We got to schedule that for tomorrow to send to Chicago for the upcoming thing on the 12th.
Yeah. I gotta put that on my calendar once and for all.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, July 12th, Chicago.
Welcome
live.
back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back to the show. So, one of the things, again, there are so many fish hooks in actual governance that it has been very striking to me lately to listen to Republicans who are increasingly aware that they are dealing with real world ramifications that Donald Trump will never experience. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, all the people around him, even if their businesses were absolutely devastated, maybe not Trump in this case, it would be hard to say. The family could, because of his position and his visibility, it could be fairly terrible. But in terms of like Peter Thiel or Musk or anything, they could lose everything but their savings and still have more money than they could spend on all of their family members, no matter how many myriad children they have in 100 lifetimes. So the idea that they care about the budget or the deficit in terms of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security is absurd. You have you have largely, and I want to be abundantly clear about this, the Peter Thiels of the world are the new Henry Kissingers. The world is full of useless eaters, people who are consuming resources who do not contribute. But there is a funny thing that happened when Democrats get in office, is that they govern for everybody, much to the chagrin sometimes of the slacktivists in our party and the periphery. They get a little mad that the help is spread so evenly and justly, no matter what. And so everything that's good about the Farm Bill, that's from Democrats. Everything that's good about after school programs, preschool, postnatal care for poor women and tribal women, like any S-chip, SNAP, all those things. Okay, that's all Democrats making those programs happen. And the dismantling of them is the only job of Republicans right now. Right now, that's what they're trying to. They're trying to dismantle all of these programs because of this sort of passive eugenics concept that we have been saving too many people that shouldn't be saved. And you just got to let God's plan work its way out, or you just got to, you can't save everybody, or why is my pocket being picked for somebody who's going to eat or drug themselves into an early grave? I just want to build a wall around my community and then pretend I live in The Walking Dead, except every store is stocked shelves. I'll give you a good example. And this is indicative across a lot of fronts. We all know the Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, Nancy Mace. Now, I have my own issues with Nancy Mace that are, I find it very confusing sometimes, Johnny. And that is because, let's see if I can open this up so I can show you guys this. That Nancy Mace says some pretty provocative or of the House and the Senate and those kind of things, right? She says she's not only, got a nice solid strain of a good old fashioned Republican bigotry going through her, but she also came out on the floor and said that her ex-husband and his friends assaulted her, drugged her and sexually assaulted her, took pictures of her without her consent. She showed their names and their information on the House floor. This was a serious allegation that a sitting congressperson made against somebody, not in court, but in many ways, the seat of law in the land, whatever people think about the SCOTUS or the federal bench. The Congress makes laws. It is where they are constructed. And she came out and did this. And again, can't speak to whether it's true or not. None of us can. That there hasn't been a trial yet, and maybe there should be, and that's that's fine. However, she also came out against animal testing because it's cruel. A lot of contradictions in Nancy Mace, and she's obviously in a transgender panic, which may be related to her sexual assault and her distrust of all things, Y chromosome. That might be why it comes up. I will always give victims, no matter how crazy they may sound to me or to you, much more room to operate, especially women who are telling the world they have been victimized. I'm going to give them more space than I would give, your average Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene in that situation where they're just being bigoted for bigots' sakes, right? Okay. But here's what's really stood out. And this is an indicative story. And this goes right along with MTG bragging about the 3,000 to 5,000 jobs that have been added to her district since she became a congressperson. All of them coming from an EV battery factory that was created by the Biden administration through grants and tax incentives. Nancy Mace secretly this week submitted a private request to the Trump administration for, and in this story it says luxury car funds. What do you think's luxury about this particular place? She goes, okay, she's made a backdoor deal to Trump's administration to release funding promised by Joe Biden's administration that would benefit the luxury car maker within a plant in her state. Now, what is it about that particular plant that makes it wouldn't be surprising that Republicans would be the party of the rich and that they would do this to try to benefit people or make rich cars cheaper or get a tax incentive so people can buy Mercedes or something like that. Why is this particularly hypocritical? Well, the private inquiries were roughly about $285 million in clean air incentives that would go to Mercedes-Benz to help subsidize the car maker producing EV vehicles.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And think about the fact that she has to do this in secret she has to reach out to the administration and go, hey, can you know that money from the Green News scam that you were stripping away? Can you make sure that actually gets to my state? Because there's 800 jobs on the line, and I was just bragging about it.
So infuriating.
It is, and by the way, this is not an outlier. This is happening. She's not the only one to do it. And again, MTG and these others have quietly said this, and they have gotten all these breaks in it, which is why it's not it's not going to benefit the deficit or the debt the way they say it is, because all this stuff is still in there, and it's long-term a way to shift the economy away from a resource-based thing to a service and mechanics-based situation where the cars that are built can rely on a multitude of sources for their energy, not just one that relies on us drilling holes in the ground, and there still being that ugly goo in the ground forever, right? And and there are all these, just like NASA, the development of EV vehicles especially has expanded the capacity of batteries for everything from your phone to your laptop and back and forth, like the electronics of it, the self-driving feature, which will, I don't see ever taking on except in like major cityscapes where, downtown areas where they have those little Zoom cars running around because the traffic is already slowed to a crawl. They're not going to break out into the rural countryside. They're not going to break out of downtown Austin and drive you, to El Paso in one of these things. It's just a little absurd. But all of that technology, even doing that part of it downtown, you can use in a myriad of other ways. And it isn't just the efficiency of transportation or the availability of transportation in downtown areas. It's also the expansion of the technology of the scanners and the sensors and the cameras on those things, and how good they have to be, and how they can parse the difference between a person, a bag of groceries, an animal, a person following the rules in traffic, and someone just wandering through, someone who might be injured. These are the things where like AI and all these sensors are expanding all the time because of this kind of technology. So when you talk about her having an EV battery factory or an EV car factory in her district or in her state that she's trying to salvage, there's 100 other things down the road in the very near future that whether she admits it or not, she's aware she's salvaging as well. These are the jobs of the future for her state, no matter what. And I don't care what anybody in West Virginia says. None of them, they might want coal mining. The only people who want coal mining jobs to come back are people who don't mine coal. People who mine coal would love to have a different option with the same kind of pay in that circumstance. They might rely on these jobs and feel like it's the devil but there's nothing about it that says, that's my dream gig. So there are, whoops, where did I get you in here, Johnny Man? I lost you. Nope, there you are. I got you.
I'm back.
Yeah. This is happening everywhere during this big budget busting bill fight. I want to remind everybody of this, because if you watch C-SPAN, and one of the things that Thune is doing is they're going to try and bring this bill to the floor before July 4th weekend. That's what they promised. They want to keep this. Trump is talking about punting it because there's all these disagreements, and they know that if they take the bill in its current form and they send it to the House, they don't have the votes. And if they put it back to where the House voted on it at that 1 vote margin slip, they don't have the votes in the Senate. That's where they are right now. And if they try to, cleave the baby in twain, it's going to be even worse. The act of compromise is so vilified in our current political climate, but also especially within the MAGA rhino micturating contest, that there's really no way out in this for them. And they still got to pass this tax cut before it ends. So they pull it out and just pass it on its own. Then what? All that does is blow a giant hole in the deficit without any of the cuts. You can't pass the cuts without promising the tax cut, the tax cut to go along with it for a bunch of people. They're painted into a corner. So the idea that they're winning automatically is, please don't get suckered into this. Don't think that Trump was able to one and done this in Iran and there's not going to be any blowback and things are just fine now. They absolutely aren't. So buying the narrative that they're selling is you are in the process of complying in advance. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. You can support the show through Super Chats or becoming a Patreon subscriber, patreon.com/Hal Sparks. And I'm going to be in town with Johnny Million doing a live WCPT event in Chicago on the 12th of July. It's going to be very excited. We'll be
told
back
me it was
right
the 17th, and I had that on the calendar.
That's a Thursday.
I know. This is bad, Hal.
Oh, because you have your show?
Yep.
You'll be there. Okay, we'll be back right after this.
I don't know.
Where's the show?
In Janesville, Wisconsin.
Oh, you can get there in 2 hours.
Yeah. At the exact same time the other show is.
What? Sorry, you're playing in the afternoon?
Oh, no. And this is in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's at the same time as the show.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, it's just the morning show. It's just now. It's during this. It's the live thing. Yeah. I mean, I was going to invite you to... Huh? No. So the Hody thing is that night. That's different. Okay. I'm talking about the Chicago Live CPT broadcast.
Oh, good.
It's the same place we were last time. The diner where we did
20 seconds, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
At that deli with the event area?
Yes.
That was insane.
It was insane.
I met the mayor.
I know, but it's just us this time. I mean, we might try to get the mayor down there again or somebody, but
come on, mayor.
We'll do. Come on, mayor. But
come on, mayor. Forget what I said. This is wonderful. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was like, why would you have a show? Daytime stage at a state fair.
Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Man, Shevitz. We settled it.
I'll be there.
Yeah, you're fine. We worked it out. Johnny Million will be there as well. Absolutely. And we'll see if we can get some other guests, our dear friends at CPT, and of course our some of our local politician folks. And
I got a lamp there. Wanted to see what the difference was. It's a big difference.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. Yeah, it's what happens in a hotel. It's offer on, right? So now I want to talk real quick on the other side of things about and there was this article. I said who is the actual person behind this? The guy Larry Jacobs, who's a director of the Center for Study of Politics and Governance at the University of Minnesota, and he's making the case that Trump's honeymoon is already over, even amongst maggots, according to his disapproval rating, and how consistent it is across a lot of things, including, if you notice, Donald Trump has not talked about Rasmussen a lot lately. Have you noticed that? Because even
that's his favorite polling place.
Yeah. I mean, the dude practically lives at the head of Rasmussen. Practically lives at Mar-a-Lago now. Rasmussen. It's very telling. It's one of his favorite things to bring up, right? Is to cover himself on Rasmussen just really saying we're just so popular. Well, Rasmussen has gone relatively quiet lately. And these kind of dust up. I mean, here's the other thing, too, is you can purchase, if you're a candidate, a push poll, meaning here's what I want you to do. Go ask questions about me in the public, but lay the question out in a way that guarantees me a good answer. Push them in the direction of the answer I would like to hear, and namely that I am beloved. And that's what Rasmussen has been basically doing amongst maggots, and also fear-mongering amongst them. Do you approve of Donald Trump, or do you want communists to turn your boys into girls with a pocket knife? Right? Like that's the phrasing that they're like, well, gosh, when you put it that way, right? Yeah. So anyways, according to him, he goes, with the Guardian's Dave Smith, he goes, in the 6 months of his second presidency, Trump's domestic honeymoon is over. Recent polling shows that 49% of voters approve of his handling of immigration, while 47% disapprove. But on the economy, 43% approve and 54% disapprove. Now, and again, depending on the information you're getting, you can see the kind of flexibility of people starting to wake up to the idea that things aren't quite as good as they were promised, that kind of thing, especially around immigration. A lot of noise. And I will tell you, one of the things about Kilmar Abrego Garcia or the other people that they have been snatching up and the stories that you're seeing that we as Democrats react negatively to and go, how inhumane and how horrible.
They get giddy.
Yes, they are very excited about it. They think it's dunking on the libtards. And they distinctly, this fills in the sort of... What?
It's never going to affect them personally. Never. I promise.
Until it does. Well, there's a bunch of the people, if they own farms or stores or...
No.
Yeah. La, 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 la. Right. Yeah. So these folks... They need this dopamine rush of, the sort of, I don't know, apprentice style that Donald Trump, this reality show elimination round that they expect all the time. The bad people are going to get, told that the America's going to get the rose, and that dude I hate on that show is going to get kicked out. He's going to lose. He's going to be kicked off the island this week. I know it, right? And that's their fixation.
Dopamine, huh? See what I did there?
I like it. Yeah, dopamine. They get their dopamine hit. So, according to Jacobs, he goes, there's a good reason for Trump to sort of bounce around and change the narrative and why he tried to wag the dog in Iran and other things. He goes, there's two presidencies. The one on the domestic front is gruesome and involves long, drawn-out and disappointing negotiations with Congress, and that's exactly what Donald Trump is engaged in right now. That's the big budget-busting bill. What emerges from Congress is not going to be big or beautiful as he promised. He added, meanwhile, we've got staggering photographs of bombs falling from the sky, Donald Trump's flamboyant description of what he achieved in Iran and Europe. That's the kind of Hollywood performance that he wants. The problem is that maggots either are against that, meaning that they don't want NATO to get stronger, or they've gone total Candace Owens on Israel. And they're like, I don't care if Iran is a threat to like every human life on the planet. At least the Jews will die first. Like that's honest to God. There is a wing of maggots that talk like that. I don't know. It'll never not be bizarre to me, right? It'll never not be bizarre to me. And
that your hate can run so deep that's groovy.
Yeah. And I mean, what kind of stuff are you trying to distract yourself from with that kind of, of your own inadequacy and what have you? But there you go. He goes, the flip out, and I covered this, and I think one of the most fiery videos I've done was my covering of Hegseth's, got a presser with Dan, Raisin Oatmeal Cane. Oatmeal Raisin Bran. Was it? Yeah. Dan Bran. That at the Pentagon where he was going, you guys it's in your DNA. Coaster. Yeah. It was it's in your DNA to criticize Trump. You just have to hate him, right? Like it's like you need another reason besides the fact the guy was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 25 years and was a mentee of Roy Cohn, two of the skeeviest people to ever set a foot on the planet, right? And yet, I need another reason to not like him. Okay, how about his tariff stuff doesn't work and he just bombed another country without congressional approval? And there's a big difference between bombing the actual facilities of an actually recognized country that the UN recognizes a country and territories taken by terrorists in parts of, countries where the territory has gone rogue, ISIS-controlled areas in Syria, the Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen, and on and on. Those are not the same as bombing a country's facilities paid for by the tax dollars at all. And that's why you got to declare war, and it matters. Again, when it came to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a lot of us were like, if he's meant to leave, he should leave. But we want due process because that applies to everybody, right? This is not difficult for us. It is for the maggots. Yep. And yet, there's enough of a split there that's causing a panic run amongst them because half of them think that he's in Israel's pocket and will do whatever he wants. The other don't care about anything except we've got to get rid of welfare because it's keeping too many poor people alive, and that's the problem. That sort of what I would call the Thanos in traffic narrative.
Yeah.
I wish I could snap my finger and half these people would disappear. They joke about it, but they mean it. And that's, and that will
Not a
always be
funny
at
joke,
odds.
man.
You what?
It's not a funny joke.
Nope. It tells on you. It explains everything else you do, right?
Yeah.
He goes, leaked, the leaked intelligence thing came out, and he goes, this is a classic deception. He's like a carnival barker who's waving his hands to keep the attention of the audience as he's hiding the part for the next trick. Politicians like to cover their track. There's no covering the tracks here. There will be known cuts to widely used programs like healthcare for Medicaid. There will be no doubt as to who's responsible. Democrats are not voting for this. They're going to have to pass it on party lines, and the implication of it will be stark. These are directly going to go to Trump, and he will not be able to blame Biden. He will not be able to lay this off on him. And part of the reason why Democrats have kind of stood back is because every time they do something, every time they make a move to try and stop something, Republicans seize on that and go, you know what? This plan would have worked if Democrats hadn't messed with it. It was going to work. That's why they want it to stop. And their voters believe it. And there's, to some degree, considering the fact that we're in the minority and the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and the SCOTUS, that standing down on your opposition for the time being is really your only option anyways. You could technically filibuster all the time, but it would mean the end of the payments to regular programs you need going out. Everything grinds to a halt, not just the stuff you hate. Right? That's how it works. Like, you're going to grind everything to a halt. And a lot of people don't pay attention to what's going on being voted on or passed through committee in the Senate or the House until it's something that you know about in the news, or because it's garnered a lot of attention. The Medicaid cuts, like I said, are definitely, have drawn a lot of attention across the rural states, but they don't know the other stuff that goes on in these situations all the time. Do you know, for example, that almost all of the grants at I think it's called grants.gov that Doge turned off, eliminated, said they saved on their big Doge page? You know, all those just came back online because they lost in court, and that money has already been allocated by the government. So they're just, boop, there they are again.
Well, all of these executive orders of like getting rid of college students on student visas and all this stuff, they're in court, and I don't know, like, they're all just going to flip, at least the really crazy ones.
Yeah. Well, and there are definitely, it's not like he can't do damage, no question. But most people aren't paying attention to the fact that if you just filibuster all the time or just grind everything to a halt, to a solid halt, you're also stopping regular order stuff that needs to happen for veterans and poor people and allocations for FEMA funds and all that kind of stuff. That has to happen all the time. And one of the fascinating parts for me is watching these Republicans, some of them in these heavily red states, suddenly talking in populist terms about Medicaid and the like. And this would be, Josh Hawley, to some degree, even Tom Cotton, because they're aware that as a red state, they are on the receiving end of blue state, and namely blue city, tax dollars. It isn't just that California provides most of the tax dollars that the Dakotas rely on, that Wyoming relies on, that Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, all these,
Arkansas,
right? That all these, they rely on not just the tax funds from California, but specifically Los Angeles and San Francisco. They don't get the tax dollars from Washington State as a blue state. It's just Seattle, downtown. It's as blue as you can get. It's Google with their diversity initiatives and their, nap pods at work and all that kind of stuff. That's who Republican rural red state voters rely on to keep the lights on, the rivers clean, and Medicaid flowing, so that, that their home health services don't get shut down. And it's our job to remind them. I would like to say, for the record. I mean, one of the things that people need to push is, and this is why the salt tax in this BBB is becoming such a leverage point because it is, like I said, it is in California that provides those. It's LA and San Francisco, the bluest of the blue that pays for all these things. But Bakersfield and all these kind of red districts where the McCarthys of the country come from, they rely on those tax dollars too. They're not the contributing factor in California. They're the draw factor. They are on the receiving ends of those funds as well. The problem is if people can't write off their salt tax for the state stuff, the state funds, the money doesn't come back to California as a whole. And when it doesn't get doled out to Bakersfield and Stockton and all those places. It goes right back to where it's most needed, which is where the most people are, in the big cities. What? Even though it's less than $1 for every dollar that goes out. So these red state Republicans in these House districts, or these blue state Republicans in red districts in places like California and other places like that, need that SALT provision because they want the state and local tax that's paid there to stay in state because that is doled out more evenly and that they can benefit from because of zoning and how it's delivered to the mayors and all that. And so they have to be for this SALT tax. They have to get it. The red district in blue states desperately need the SALT deduction to be as high as possible. If it's 10 grand, it's not going to help. It's going to cut the funding to where they need it. It's not enough. It's got to be closer to 30 or 40 minimum. Well, red state people who are selling red state, red district, deeply dyed-in-the-wool red areas are selling a bill of goods to their voters that it's your tax dollars that are paying for these inner city people when it's the exact opposite. And behind the scenes, you got the Nancy Maces of the world tiptoeing around going, yeah, cut their stuff, but don't cut our stuff because obviously we get $1.34 in federal funds for every dollar we put in. And without that extra 34 cents, our state would collapse and nobody would believe my flim-flam about bootstrapping and welfare queens. We'll be back right after this. I want to talk about the New York mayoral race and the SCOTUS ruling. Remind me, Johnny Million, because there's so much to talk about. It's easy to get kind of on and the show will breeze by. SCOTUS ruling. No. You know who's really not a fan of it? Well, I'll tell you when we come back.
Your mom.
Ouch. That's true, though. Whoops, hold on. Where is this? Sorry. Where are we? There you go. I gotta say, dude's looking pretty terrible.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah. This is he was expecting this to be a less burdensome term than his first.
Yeah, he thought it was just going to be his revenge tour.
Yep.
But right now he's got like those Dick Van Dyke 100-year-old eyes.
Yep. Only Dick Van Dyke's eyes still have joy in them.
They do. Like when you see him talk and everything, he seems like, very animated and very alive, but he's only got so much collagen in his body to keep his eyes front and center.
Yeah, right.
And they're way back and they're real red rimmed, but he's Dick Van Dyke. Mm-hmm. And Trump is, what's the opposite of joy? Trump. That's pretty much Trump.
We're back in 20.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Thank you. We'll be back right at this. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Stargal, for the super chat. By the way, share the show. It annoys the maggot in your life.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
We've got a lot of questions for our dear friend Philip Ittner, who will be with us in the next hour, including AM radio guy who's saying, ask him about the 100,000 Russian troops that are surrounding a city right now. I will direct
questions, everybody. I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, send him to tag Johnny in him, and that will make sure that he gets to him. All right, so the ruling in the SCOTUS was not, I repeat, was not the ruling about birthright citizenship. It was a preliminary shot across the bow about injunctions against it temporarily. And the ruling from the SCOTUS on birthright citizenship, concerning that it may be, will not come out till October. And more than likely, it will be a strict constitutionalist interpretation of it, and people will maintain their citizenship. But the idea that he could strip it of somebody in the interim is not the case. If somebody's born and is arguing for their citizenship or filing their citizenship papers, it's not going to be on hold. It will continue as such. And the Supreme Court's ruling on it actually put a 30-day pause, their own universal injunction on it during this period of time, while it's punted back down to the lower courts to decide, which will ultimately decide that it is unconstitutional to strip people of their birthright citizenship because it's in the Constitution and it's meant to be read that way. So that said, the real ruling on it won't be till the fall. And there are a lot of concerns to be had about these kind of injunctions he's putting forward. There are some upsides that I will say. One of them is that largely this has to do with his executive orders, which even at their absolute outside all go away when he's no longer president. There's a reason why the rules on these are lower. The standards are lower because they are temporary and their basis. By the way, it's why his tax cut that they're pushing through is also, it's because it's temporary. That's why you can do that with just reconciliation. If you wanted that tax cut to be made permanent, which you've noticed they've stopped talking about. They've not said this is going to make the tax cut permanent. We want to make Trump's tax cuts permanent. Remember that whole conversation? Notice how that languaging has gone away, and it's just we're trying to avoid the biggest tax increase in history. They changed the languaging on that, right? The reason that they're doing that is, one, they can't make it permanent without affecting the debt, and there's a bunch of people in their own party that will go against it, and they can't pass it with less than 60 votes if it's permanent. Because it ends at the end of the president's term and has to be re-upped, they can do it with a sheer majority, with a simple majority. That's why. So a lot of this stuff is going to be, I understand the rending of garments, and it is very serious. However, it does not mean that because the injunctive ability of federal courts has been limited, and it wasn't taken away totally, but it's been limited severely. Will it benefit Trump in trying some of the things he's doing and trying on his cruelty hat? Yes. Will there be no recourse in pushing back against it? Absolutely not. And the only thing is that I got to tell you, it puts more weight on the voter. Guess what, kids? It's up to us. It was up to us last time, and we let the world down. It's up, and the SCOTUS ruling. I want to make this abundantly clear to everybody. Did not happen this week. It happened in 2016. It happened when Donald Trump was allowed to shape the court, because we dropped that ball. That's what happens when with ebb and flow voter turnout.
Did you see the emails, Sal?
Right. We didn't show up. We didn't, and again, I will put in a box everybody's idea that it was stolen and that there was shenanigans and all that kind of stuff. Great. If we could prove that and turn around and knock yourself out. But right now on Earth One, the situation we're in, right? This is on us.
DC Comics Earth One. It's huge.
Yeah. It's crucial that we remember that going into the next election and the one after that and the one after that, because when women had their rights stripped away by this court, it didn't happen when they put pen to paper on that ruling. That wick was lit when Donald Trump got elected. And I lay this right at the feet. I would never expect Republicans to come to their senses. None of us can cajole them to sanity about these issues. They genuinely believe that this is the way to go in some cases. whether out of cruelty or misplaced understanding of reality. I can only talk about us as a voter bloc and as a group of politically motivated and well-intentioned voters standing down effectively in 2 cycles because America ran a woman and that shaved enough off the numbers to give it to this cretin. And I know people want to go, wag their fist at the court or even at Trump. But this is for better or worse, this is a representative democracy. And even if it's out, off kilter, it still represents the reality that happened. Right? And so it's on us. Next election, the one after that, the one after that. And anybody who's floating around some sort of lesser of two evils or the establishment of the Democratic Party finger wagging is wasting everyone's time, is counterproductive. And that will bring me to don't Z the Zoran or whatever in New York. First of all, let me just say, cool. I'm glad he won in ranked voting and maybe even on the merits of that. And I don't know why anybody would expect Cuomo to have some sort of big push in the Democratic side of things, being that he left under a cloud of Me Too stuff, which is particularly galling as a Democrat, right? Well, we are the party who, if you turn up on the Epstein list, we're fine with punting you. The Republicans are the ones that will take you, regardless. If they get what they want in terms of tax breaks, they don't care if you were on Epstein Island dozens of times. We do. So the idea that he was going to make a real run for this is very strange. That said, it's a mayoral race, kids, in a blue city. It's blue on it's blue on blue stacking. Could it be helpful? Sure. But the things he's promising still have to go through what's effectively the New York City Council and the borough presidents or captains or whatever they do, like their weird system there. That's, it's the same issue that you have in Los Angeles, where the city council has more power than the mayor does a good portion of the time. But are people going to react if he can't get some of the things he wants to get done and go, well, the city council, that's the real problem? No. They're going to say he promised it and he didn't deliver, and it will be on him. That and even if he's successful, which I hope he is with a bunch of these things, you're still going to be in a situation where it's going to take 3 to 6 years to implement. Maybe multiple terms as mayor, right? That's what's crucial. And so you're going to have some voter stamina. If you want the things that he's proposing in New York to actually happen, especially elsewhere, that place has to work as a pilot program. He has to be able to pass it and get it through and get it funded. And then it's got to phase through the funding point to where it pays for itself. It doesn't add to the debt of the city. That's what's going to happen. And that takes time, even if it's successful. And this is the lesson we need to take from what Trump is trying to do with these tariffs, this illusion, like we're taking in billions. Yeah, but we're losing trillions, you weirdo. That's the issue. And so is there cause to celebrate among some folks? Sure. But you got to understand, this was Democratic primary in a Democratic city with ranked choice voting. So you'll get, second tier. If you were their second choice, you'll get a vote added to you if you beat that particular person. And so you're folding it in. And that's awesome. But that's not how the federal elections are going to operate. It's certainly not how the next presidential election is going to operate. And New York City itself is not going to be able to upend federal policies. They aren't going to be able to by themselves. Yeah, and Robin says New York City will hate the mayor in 6 months no matter who it is. Well, that's exactly right. And if you're promising something so extraordinary, you have to understand that that's going to come with it. You've got to understand that even if you're doing it well, even if it's working, you're going to get a shift in voters, that vacillation that we deal with all the time with these, the Obama independents that went to Trump, right? That idea. Those folks, you got to keep convincing them. And they're not going to like the long-term plan of it. They want that solution to show up because they are fickle. voters. And if you lose them, then the entire plan is blamed. Not, oh, well, we just have a fickle electorate and you got to, this takes commitment. It's like a healthcare plan, like you got to, or going to the gym you got to go to the gym all the time. You got to keep going. And some days it sucks. That's the mentality we have to have as voters.
I went to a hotel gym today and it sucked.
The one we had the other day was awesome. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Philip Bittner's going to be joining us from Kyiv. We got a lot of questions for him and a lot of stuff going on. Also, he spent a good deal of time covering the Middle East, so we will also talk about a bunch of those issues and get some of your questions through Johnny Million right after we come back after the news. It's the Housemarks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. There we go. Hold on, let me preview this in here and try to get you guys in here. What's a second? Excellent. Nope, here we go. All right, there's you. Okay, put Johnny in there.
It took me a minute to realize where my Tourette's was coming from. Caddyshack, of course.
Yeah, I don't know that qualifies.
Go fill up my cold coffee with some of Mrs. Million's old cold coffee.
That's sweet. Okay. Gotcha. And then I'm going to bring in Phil. There we go. There he is. There we are. Hey, Phil, welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil.
There's a. Let me open up my.
Johnny.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Bill, I don't know how much of the NATO stuff you saw. Yeah. But there's I'll explain my premise, and I want to see what your take is on it when we.
I really don't care about the NATO summit, except for the fact that what Trump said about maybe giving Patriots to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm more interested in what happened at the PACE meeting.
Right. Yeah, you and I talked about that on Wednesday anymore. Right.
Yeah, Americans don't matter anymore.
And so weird. Trump his whole thing about he saved the Ayatollah from a horrible and shameful death. Shameful.
Yeah, it's
all right.
It's over.
Yeah.
We've crossed Rubicon. Europeans are not going to trust us anytime soon.
Mm-mm.
And we are isolating ourselves and destroying ourselves. And that's exactly what Moscow wants us to do. And that's why Trump is an agent of the Kremlin.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, well, that's becoming abundantly clear. And that came up at the NATO, from I think it was the NATO, the former NATO commander.
Hodges?
No, it was, hold on, the French dude.
The French dude.
Michel Yakovlev. The former deputy chief of staff, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, retired French Major General Michel Yakovlev, said if it was up to Trump, he would simply hand Ukraine over to Putin on a platter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we have leading GOP members saying, time for us to leave NATO, and because the Queen of the Netherlands disrespected Daddy.
Yeah,
we're done. We're done.
Well, no, here's the other thing too: is there is
we've crossed a Rubicon. We've crossed a line. The second administration is done irreparable damage to the transatlantic alliance, and Europeans are just not going to look to America the same way ever again, or at least in our lifetimes.
Okay, I happen to think that.
They'll let us back in. They'll let us back in. The associations will renew once Trump leaves the office.
Mm-hmm.
But the damage that's been done in the sense that you can never trust the Americans because the Americans might vote in another maniac.
Right. Well, they're going to have to backfill in a way that they didn't think they had to before. They're going to have to create, which is what the 5% is about. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it because Trump bullied them into doing it. They're upping their ante
from Russia.
Right.
Yeah. And besides, the whole guideline thing is a red herring anyhow. And we wrote that into the NATO charter. That was us that did that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We didn't want foreign governments telling us what to do with our budget. We're the ones that wrote into the NATO country.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Joining us from Kyiv, our dear friend Philip Ittner. Johnny Million is with us, also farming questions from our chat room at infotainmentwars.com, on Twitch, twitch.tv/Hal Sparks, on kick.com at Hal Sparks. You follow on there. And on basically anywhere you go on the internet that you can stream to for free, I'm there. I've been waiting for them to allow it on Truth Social. I think I'm almost single-handedly responsible for them not allowing live streaming on Truth Social because they know I'm coming for that time slot. But there was obviously a lot of talk about the NATO summit in the same way that there was talk about the G7, where Trump came in, was there for a day. He left early. They all continued on without him being there. There is, there's so much to talk about. But first of all, Phil, how are you as far as safety in the city and Kyiv and what's been going on there since we last spoke?
I live in Kyiv. I live under the constant threat of death.
Yeah. Agreed. And then on top of that, all right. So tell everybody what the PACE gathering was, which was the sort of the secondary meeting that was kind of eclipsed by NATO and its importance as far as people knowing what was going on there.
Well, the PACE meeting is the assembly of the Council of Europe, and it was notably more important here in Ukraine because Ukraine, and I would argue further on, the European nations have abandoned America, and it's done. We have crossed a line in the sand that we are not going to be able to uncross for quite some time. And they don't trust America. They don't believe in America. They don't think that anything beneficial is going to come from America. I mean, the only thing that Ukraine got out of the NATO assembly was a kind of a wishy-washy kind of maybe we'll provide Patriot missile batteries.
Yeah.
There was no fixation. There was no, not fixation, but there was no proper attention given to the conflict here, which is going to change the continent of Europe and arguably the world, because Trump comes over and he is a 10-ton gorilla in a small room, and they just kind of placate him and send him on his way, hoping that too much damage doesn't get done. But we're past a line with our position in the world because of Trump, and it's going to take some time to return to
I agree.
a place where we have an alliance and an agreement that benefits both.
Yeah, when we're talking about the 5%, Trump wants to take a lot of credit for the upping of, first of all, everybody coming on board with their 2% or 2.5%, depending on the size of the country, and then it moving to 5% commitment by the NATO countries. I would argue that he is responsible for that by being unreliable, that Europe has decided.
Not the way he thinks.
Yeah, not because he talked them into it. He's a great deal maker, and it's actually counter to what Putin wanted him to do. My feeling on this, and I'm curious about your take on this, but My feeling is that Putin, his marching orders from Putin was get rid of NATO. When you come in, just undermine it, don't support it, attack it every possible way you can, so that it'll basically collapse under its own weight. The expectation that these countries more countries will be added once the Ukraine invasion happens, or that the rest of Europe will, maintain it without the United States financial support was out of the question as far as Putin was concerned. And so he was just like, just act like it's not necessary anymore. Shrug it off. Standard Trump BS about this kind of stuff. Just let it slide. And maybe it'll collapse under its own weight, or you can pull the United States out once I've told you to. The Europeans aren't stupid, and they're wise to this part of it. And the decision to move to 5% has everything to do with we're going to make up the gap that the United States is not putting into this anymore because the threat is increasing. And it's created an environment that's the exact opposite of what Putin wants, and certainly off the path that Trump was headed towards. It's a good thing overall, but Trump taking credit for it like he made a deal is absurd. The deal that was made was, you are a drunk driver, we are taking the keys away, we'll drive now. That's why they're doing it, not that he talked them into how important this financial commitment is.
Yeah, the Europeans are kicking up to 5% because they see the threat from Russia.
Yeah,
in a clearer sense, because it's become more imminent as America has, under Trump, clearly indicated its lack of dedication to the defense of Europe. So the Europeans are kind of building up their spending in spite of Trump, not because of Trump. They have to, because they recognize that suddenly this is very much more real for them. As far as like the NATO summit, it is telling that the Canadian the two bullet points that came out of NATO, and again, NATO, the NATO summit came and went, and I don't really care, nor do many Ukrainians. But if there were two bullet points to bring out of it, it is maybe the Patriots, but also that the Canadians struck essentially a bilateral agreement with the European Union that they would continue to respect Article 5, and that there would be a military alliance between Canada and the European nations that would be independent of whatever relationship America has. So more and more, the rest of the world is. You can never make America irrelevant. Yeah, too big, too powerful, too much money. But in essence, on the geopolitical stage, in terms of alliances and military agreements and just
security in general, trust,
security, and good relations between nations, America is becoming less and less relevant, and the Europeans, the Canadians, the international community are like, hey, you guys voted in a maniac, and instead of trying to work with a maniac, we'll go over here, we'll do our thing. America, if you get your act together, of course you're welcome back, but we're not going to try and find a way forward in a Pax Americana kind of perspective of global security. We'll beat our own path. Yeah. And I mean, of course, absolutely. But as an American, I'm sad to see that happen. We are stronger together.
I think we ran into similar situations, certainly under, think of Bush 2 and the Iraq and the Afghanistan wars, and the way, freedom fries and the cajoling of Europe into following us on this stupid errand into Iraq and Afghanistan, and the money spent there, not just by us, but by them as well. This is a wholly different thing than the threat that Russia, represents. And the awareness, I think, too, that Putin and those, in I guess in the leadership in Russia or whatever, have had this long game towards Europe and the United States, and Trump has been part of this, obviously, where they feel like, unless they understand it. Like, I have a real issue with Germany telling us that we elected a crazy person, specifically, if you know what I mean. And so there's no nation gets to skip history. And America kind of seemed to for a while, even though we were doing stuff like the Iraq War, nobody ran out of trust for the United States long term because of that, even though they kind of should have. And right now, I really do feel like if Trump, stepped down, keeled over, fell apart, whatever, was, impeached, and, Vance became a lame duck and a Democrat took over, and it was Newsom or Newsom Granholm or whoever else we would put up in the next run, no matter who it is, the immediate response from Europe will be, not only do we need to rejoin with America, America's back, the way Trump was kind of talking about it from his side, which is about retreat, but they would go, America's back, and we would write, I think, the language of the treaties that we have in a much finer way, with the assumption that we were taking for granted that somebody would not just roll in and ignore the rule of law the way Trump has. The way we're going to have to do legislation in the United States, we're going to have to batten down the hatches on so many loopholes that we took for granted because we were like, nobody would do anything like that. That's insane. And here comes Trump doing exactly that. If there's a gap, he's going to grab it. And that's the issue that, that's the lesson.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but the horse is bolted. It's done. It's
gotcha. All right.
We can Bush's policy was a bad decision, but it was a policy decision. What Trump has done is he has destroyed the good trust, which is goes beyond policy. That goes into structure. And the damage that he has done, it will be a long time coming before Europe is going to trust America again. They will, of course, work with America because, again, we can't be ignored. We're too big. And they want to be us.
Right.
They want us to be allies. They want to be with us.
Yep.
But this has been
saying,
so devastating.
By the way, I agree. I'm not saying they should trust us again or that we're going to go back to this kind of blind trust. I'm saying that what's going to be required after Trump is a real legislative bloodletting where we go through and go, look, there were gaps in our treaties and how we respond to each other that have no fail safes on them because we didn't think they'd be necessary. They obviously are. And we're going to have to do work on our side to regain that trust, but verify it first. We'll take a break. We'll come back after this. It's the Housemarks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Bittner has a show called On the Edge, and you can check it out every Sunday. We'll be back right after this. So the British general, I think, Sir Richard Sheriff, said, came out and basically said Trump will walk away from NATO at a moment's notice, and he is in Russia's pocket. Like that was his response and all this. And I think Iran is what makes everybody, for anybody who was on the fence about it, Iran is the one, who the situation in Iran is what made everybody go, he did this all for Russia. Like the whole phony bombing of stuff, the making them more on the hook for Russia, protecting the Ayatollah. There is no material reason why anybody in MAGA would care either way about that or insist on it. But it is absolutely one of Putin's, it's on his checklist. Thank you. That's on his checklist.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, welcome back to the Housemarks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, we were discussing this a little during the break, but what seems to have clinched it for everybody is not that, Trump has obviously gotten some of his loans backfilled by Russia over the years and feels like he owes Putin this or has some sort of like sycophantic strongman affection for him. But people vacillate whether he's just doing it out of self-interest or he's a wannabe or whether he's Putin is owed some sort of behavior. But what clinched it for a bunch of people that say that Trump is, and this was one of the former Secretary Generals of NATO saying that Trump will walk away from NATO at a moment's notice and he is in Putin's pocket. The reason that they finally came to that conclusion, even if they have been toying with the language or afraid to say it outright, was because of what happened in Iran. That the fact that they stopped Israel from decapitating the regime and tried to get back to a status quo in that country as fast as possible, which is bizarre for a Republican, much less somebody in Trump's world. The idea that he wouldn't want, even if you could just trigger a regime change situation in there by accident, they were taking great steps to make sure they didn't. That's what gave it away. Everybody's like, okay, this is clearly him doing favors for Putin. Not just because if Iran's in a protracted fight with Israel, these are weapons that will not be going to Russia to fight in Ukraine. And we now know, this is a report that's coming out, a Trump official told CNN that they were going to invest $20 to $30 billion in Iran in a nuclear facility that would not require enrichment. So the American taxpayer, and along with like Arab partners, would invest or we would allow it, private industry, to invest in a nuclear program for Iran, $20 to $30 billion of that, including giving Tehran access to $6 billion that is currently trapped in foreign bank accounts. Now, you'll recall that they told everybody that Biden gave $6 billion for the hostages or just because he felt like it to Iran, and Iran used that to pay for October 7th. First of all, that's hooey. That money never left the South Korean bank account that it was in. That $6 billion specifically is from money that Donald Trump gave South Korea special dispensation to buy Iranian oil. They were going to pay with that money, and that money was frozen once Trump was caught. People caught him out and said he's allowing Iran to sell oil to South Korea, and so he backed off of it, and that money got frozen in that account. What Biden was going to do at one point was unfreeze that money, which was Iran's from South Korea. It wasn't U.S. money. It wasn't money from any of our accounts. It was money that Iran was owed for oil it gave to South Korea. And that $6 billion would be in exchange for the hostages that Iran had. We got our hostages, and the money was never unfrozen. It's still in the account. And now Donald Trump is talking about giving that $6 billion that he said they already had and that was already given to them by the Biden administration to Iran for their nuclear program. It is clown town in the White House right now. Everything's in the upside down. And that is how it's, whether that actually becomes part of the deal or not is absurd. And the idea that if Iran agrees to something, it's because Putin's winking at them, saying, just bide your time, we'll handle this. But because they need the weapons. So a couple things. We have some questions I know from the chat room. One of them was about there being 100,000 Russian soldiers surrounding a Ukrainian city or something along those lines. I'm not familiar with what that's about. Which one is it? Sorry?
Pokrovsk.
Is it Pokrovsk? Okay.
110,000.
Okay. So and it is surrounded, or are they up against it?
They have amassed 100,000. I don't think surround is not the right word. They've amassed a 110,000
a meat wave
man force, a meat wave to try and take Pokrovsk. And Pokrovsk is, it's not. It's got strategic value, but again, we're talking about all of Donetsk. All of really literally all of Donbass doesn't really matter to Ukraine. It would be damaging. It would be harmful to the economy. to lose the assets of Donbass. It would provoke a potential resumption of hostilities because Russia could take Donbass and then sue for some sort of milquetoast peace, gather its forces together, and then have a better strategic advantage for another a follow-on war. But again, unless they can change the government, look, people, unless they can change the government in Kiev to a pro-Moscow government, and unless they can take Odessa and regain control of the North Bank of the Black Sea, thereby controlling the strategic interests that they have in the Black Sea, Russia cannot win this war.
Right.
And they can take they can take Pokrovsk, they can take Khabarovsk, they can take Kramatorsk, they can take Kherson, all of it. They can take all sorts of cities. But unless they change the government in Kiev and there's a sovereign state called Ukraine, and unless they can take Odessa and thereby securing the security of their naval base in the Crimean Peninsula at Sevastopol, this war will have been for nothing.
Yeah.
Except to potentially position themselves for a follow-on war, which would be even more devastating. It is a storm in a teacup. And it is devastating for the people of Pokrovsk. It is devastating for the country of Ukraine to lose that territory. It's devastating for the Ukrainian GDP to lose the assets that are out in the east. But ultimately, the die was cast when they could not march on Kiev and when they could not take Odessa. They got stopped in Kherson. They got stopped in places like Bucha and
everywhere in the first 6 days,
Once it was decided that they would have to retreat from their advance on Kiev, and once they were not going to be able to sweep along the southern coast, the northern coast of the Black Sea, southern coast of Ukraine, this war was determined 3 years ago.
Right.
And I have said this repeatedly on your show. The only difference is the amount of people that have to die before the inevitable is agreed upon, until Moscow recognizes that this was a failed adventure and that this idea of Russian imperialism is dead, and that they cannot take Ukraine. And that was decided 3.5 years ago. The only thing that the West had to do was properly supply the Ukrainians with the weaponry that they needed to make that message known to Moscow. And we didn't do it. We didn't do it during the Biden administration. The Europeans didn't do it for a variety of different reasons, which we have discussed previously. But ultimately, the West did not recognize that really you had an option of two bad choices. Either you let Ukraine be taken over, and then you have to fight a major NATO-Russian war, or you help the Ukrainians to win with the less amount of casualties possible. And both America and the Europeans decided not to take that into account and hope that they could have their cake and eat it too, that they could stick their head in the sand and pretend this wasn't happening. But the thing is that the Russians cannot take Ukraine. They cannot achieve their strategic goals unless something significant changes in the metrics of this war. They're not going to take Kiev, and they're not going to take Odessa. And as such, the only question is how many Ukrainians have to die before Moscow knows that. And we could have made that message much more clear to the Russians by supporting Ukraine better than we have. Now, if that changes, great. If it doesn't, then Ukrainians will continue to die, and eventually there will be, partisan war and insurgency. But Moscow can't win here. And
we also have a situation. There's also an issue with the budget outlay for Ukrainian aid that still does exist in the CR from last year. That if the Republicans are unable to pass their big budget busting bill, which it looks increasingly like they're not going to, even if they do pass like the tax cut and other stuff, they still will have to pass a budget because that it requires 60 votes. The other stuff that they want to do, the stuff that's being stripped out that they still need to do, has to be done in a budget. The chances of them actually crafting one, much less passing one, is absurd. So we're staring down the barrel of yet another CR, which would be in that continuing resolution the same amount of aid allocated from last year to Ukraine in a myriad of forms that can't be stopped, even though Pete Hegseth tried earlier this year. That money went out the door. That money went to Ukraine. And you're going to have a real hard time, I think, having him complain about the money we're spending on defending Russia, Ukraine from Russian aggression. And then Trump start trying to sell everybody that he's going to give $6 billion of Korean money for oil that's been held in a bank account to Iran, and giving them $20 to $30 billion to build a nuclear reactor. That sales pitch, paralleling the sales pitch that we shouldn't be helping Ukraine, is going to be increasingly more difficult, especially as you got, the hawks of his party that are giving him concessions, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, who, as much as they, are for bigger parts of his BBB, they're big on making sure Ukraine has these funding. They still have a grudge about Russia, probably because of, past violence, but also possible compromise and other stuff. Like, this is their only way out of this, is if Russia goes down. That they need this from him, right? And so the CR might be the softest way he can do it. He can give money to Ukraine for those guys, placate them, without actually telling maggots, oh, well, it's not our fault. It's just that we can't get any Democrats to vote for our amazing budget that's incredible and beautiful and gorgeous and smart and better and faster and cheaper and, sexier than anything they could put forward. They just don't like me. That's going to be a sales point. I went over the break. When we come back, we'll have more questions from the chat room for Phil through Johnny at infotainmentwars.com, and of course on Twitch. Just let Johnny know you've got a question for Phil, and we'll get it to him. Ukraine took out another 2 Russian fighter bombers 400 kilometers inside Russia with drones yesterday.
Su-35s, I believe.
Yeah, but the fighter bombers. Yep.
Short break, 20 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And the Russians are claiming that they've secured one of the lithium deposits. And that's a
but
it's a bummer. It's a bummer, but
again,
you're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Can I just say that one of the ways, before we take another question, one of the ways it's indicative of who's behind the 8 ball and who's actually messaging versus reality, losing the messaging versus reality war, is that the Russians are saying they secured the lithium deposits in the eastern part of the country in Ukraine, and they're bragging about that fact, I suppose. The United States in the Salton Sea area and the Dry Lake area has discovered 2 of the biggest lithium deposits in the world. Also, the rare earth minerals that everybody's that aren't rare, they're just rare amongst piles of dirt. They're just spread out. In some areas, they're closer together, and so it's easier to mine, but they're not, more common. It's just how they're spread out. There's a huge strip mine that has just started up again outside of Las Vegas. That is, the place where we're going to get the majority of our rare earth minerals. The other stuff will be on top of it for industry, for them to sell to the rest of the world. But as far as our needs getting met as a country, that's all going to happen in country now as well. And our deal with Ukraine will be meaningful for the business interests that Trump is trying to court, and it will be better. But lithium ain't going to be what we need from them. As a matter of fact, South Korea has already announced that they are moving on to the next phase of non-lithium batteries, and that's going to change the whole game entirely. It just is. So they're about 2 to 5 years behind in what they think they're securing. It's like securing all the kerosene in the world as the world has moved on to natural gas. Right now, America is like the singular biggest source of ethane, which is what's used to make plastic. China needs it. One of the reasons why Trump thinks he has leverage is because of natural gas production, we have so much of this stuff. And it's specific to the East Coast of the United States that it's present in the natural gas there. It's not in Russian natural gas, for example. And they shifted so much to oil because they were trying to get into the engines of Southeast Asia as it grew. They skimped on their natural gas exploration, and now all their engineers are dead. In Russia. Or have fled. It's ridiculous. So the rare earth argument is getting weaker by the day and is becoming as tired as fake.
Yeah, how are they going to develop that lithium mine when the entire infrastructure, every town and city around it has been decimated? So
yeah, exactly. You're going to move people in and put them in tents to work the lithium, mining there. It's absurd. Let's grab a question, Johnny, for Phil, because I will eat up most of that time. I know it.
I've got something from James Etling. Ask Phil if all the NATO countries committing to 5% of their budget to defense was a win for Putin.
A win for Putin, in the sense that the Western European powers are going to hobble their economy because they're spending more. I mean, maybe. I don't. I would need more context for that question. But no, I don't think it's a win for Putin ultimately, because the Europeans are definitely waking up to the idea that
that threat is real.
The threat is real, and if they don't stop Russia here in Ukraine, that they won't be spending 5%, say, for the next 10 years or whatever. They're going to be doing it for as long as
Russia
any
exists.
Of us draw breath.
Right.
Yeah. And they don't want to do that. They recognize the threat. They are ramping up production. They are spending more because they need to, and they should have been doing for quite some time, but that goes into a whole other discussion. Did they rely on America too much? Did they think they could coast with American, military global power? Regardless, they are now aware that Russia is an existential threat to them. And so I cannot imagine that Putin is sitting in the Kremlin being happy that the European nations have bumped it up to 5%. Got another one, Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny, go for it.
This is from Damon Dog. How does Russia taking the lithium field affect any deals Ukraine has already made for those resources, given its largest lithium field in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, in terms of the agreements that it made with America regarding rare earth metals, tough. You know what, America? If you want that lithium field, send us some more Bradleys.
Right.
We'll take that. We'll take that field back. Is the kind of mentality here. So I don't think it changes the metrics as far as further negotiations for economic development in Ukraine with Western powers, in particular the United States, because the fickle nature of war is the fickle nature of war. Look, if you are betting on developing those lithium fields, you are at the craps table.
Yeah.
You're in Reno, you're in Vegas, you're in Monte Carlo throwing some dice.
Yeah.
Because if you are thinking that you are guaranteed to get a profit from investing or making some sort of agreement with Ukraine over assets that it has along the line of contact, then that's on you, buddy. So no, I don't think it changes an awful lot in terms of international relations or alliances or things like that. It's that was a bet.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's grab another one, Johnny.
Sure thing. I've got one here from Chris Doug. Please ask Phil if he believes the EU can form a powerful military alliance that can stand up to Russia, or are they outmatched if the U.S. doesn't support them?
I think they can. More importantly, actually, they themselves don't have to put up a fighting force. They have one of the best fighting forces in the world already engaged with the enemy. what they need to do is ramp up production to provide, all this talk of like the West is willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian, has never spent any time in Ukraine and doesn't know Ukrainians. They will do the fighting themselves, gladly, as a matter of fact, with great pride and with aggressiveness. Europe does not have to fight Russia. Europe has to provide the weaponry for Ukraine to fight Russia, and Ukraine will break the back of Moscow. It is a legacy going back several centuries. So I think that as a fighting force, Europe has a long way to go, with some exceptions, the Poles in particular, who would be a on the battlefield bulwark against Russia, but they don't have to do that because Ukraine is already there. Ukraine is already that bulwark. You just need to give them the weaponry to do it.
Well,
they'll do it themselves.
This goes to that concept, Phil, we've talked about like the advanced weaponry that's going to be coming out of Ukraine because of the fight that they've had to carry forward. Because it's ironic that it is the fact that we have held back so many weapons from them that had we given them early, this would have been ended a lot faster, that they have had to be so resilient and create the drone warfare that has been so impressive that they basically rechanged the faces of war. Because if we'd have given them, say, long-range missiles early on, they may not have ever had to get to this point. It may have reached a stalemate, and the advances that Ukraine created would not have been necessary. So it's fascinating that almost how this turned out put Ukraine in a position where the rest of Europe is looking to them for weapons development and security. That they're going to,
Look, go back and watch last week's episode of On the Edge. Very simple. Go to YouTube. Just look up my name, Philip Ittner, 1 L in Philip, 2 T's in Ittner. Last week's episode is a conversation with the head of a industry association talking about private Ukrainian arms industry developers. They are at the forefront. They are the ones who will teach us how to fight in a modern war, because they're the ones. Innovation comes from times of great stress, and they are. I saw a quote. Darn, I'm forgetting who it was. There was a NATO commander who said, actually, we need to learn from Ukraine. Ukraine is the one that needs to teach NATO. NATO is not the one teaching Ukraine.
Right. And they will be the material supplier of these things. They're going to be the place where if you're going to buy these advanced drone systems, there's only two markets, the United States and Ukraine. And if they're your neighbor and you've helped them, they're going to give you a deal and all this kind of stuff that Trump likes to talk about. There's a great reason for Europeans to play ball with Ukraine, to have access to these things and the coordination. One of the things that I find particularly fascinating in this whole thing, and this, necessity being the mother of invention, specifically when it comes to drone warfare and the like, is that the Ukrainians have had to develop, because they're behind the 8 ball, because Russia is so much bigger and has so many people they could send, these mothership drone packages that are able to, coordinate together, like the advances in autonomous kill machines, which has been, was for a long time, was a science fiction, but everything that scared the living daylights out of everybody about where warfare was going eventually has become a natural part of what was necessary to fight Russia. So Russia has these battery arrays where it can fire at drones and confuse the signal and make them crash or send them home or, mess around with them. That's been around for a while. And so that was their defense. What was Ukraine's only response to this? The only option they had was to make the drones autonomous on their own, make them able to seek their own target without getting information directly live from whoever sent them. So to fit the rules of war, and what that meant, they had to develop the software so that it's only hitting military targets and it won't just automatically say that school looks like a military base. They had to do all the advancements to stay within this so they wouldn't burn their own bridges with the rest of Europe while they did this. And they created the Golog, the HX-1. These are these drone systems that if you fire, one of these disruptor arrays at it where it loses signal, it will switch to AI mode until that signal goes away, until it's flown past it or around it, and then it'll reconnect. That's how the drone strikes worked that Ukraine just did. That's how the last two from a couple days ago happened 400 kilometers inside Russia. And that's something that Ukraine now has to offer Europe that even the United States doesn't have to offer Europe. And it is way closer to what...
Yeah, and the technical understanding and the strategic understanding and operators and using different drones in different configurations for different scenarios. All of these things are going to be desperately requested by by all nations. The Ukrainian defense industry is already one of the world's best defense industries,
right.
And they are going to be taking advantage of that because war is not going to go away. AI powered, the mother drone thing,
Yep. This is a huge thing, and this is going to change the face of. I mean, people are already talking about it, like from a strategic standpoint. I've said this for a long time. It's one of the reasons why everybody asserting that if Bernie Sanders was president, that he wouldn't have sent in drones in certain areas. And I'm like, nope. If he has to send something in, it's going to be a drone because drones don't come home draped in a flag draped coffin ever. So that's how it is going to work. You just want people who you trust their judgment when these things do have to be used. You want the most moral and the most capable person to make these difficult decisions, not the guy you'd rather have a beer with in the case of, Bush or the guy that you think is a great TV host in the case of Trump or something. And this is something the Ukrainians are working very hard at because they're doing it while the world is watching. Russia doesn't care if the world hates it for what it does. Ukraine, its survival is predicated on the judgment of European countries and the United States public. That if we watch them do something, if they fought fire with fire like Bucha, and when we're going to send a raid party in like it's Viking times, and we're going to do to their women and children what they did to our women and children, no one would back them. And the standard for their behavior is far higher. It's been to some degree unfairly so in the circumstance. But better that has resulted in them being the most astute and moral fighting force in this circumstance because they've had to, because it would be too easy for the Trumps of the world to pull what little support they are getting. It's been brilliant. They have solved this problem through intellect in a situation that is, would have been thought to be insurmountable just a few years ago. It's incredible. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more. Johnny Million. Yeah, this is just one example of this. There was a big story last November about how they were using these AI-powered drone systems. And then, of course, we saw that actually Zelensky had a lot of cards when he was sitting with Donald Trump. Yeah. Go to here. There we go. Here. Okay, we'll be back up in a second. What's in the new episode that you'd like to cover, Phil?
Legal reforms. Justice system reforms.
Gotcha.
And we're trying to get Bridget Brink.
Gotcha.
Who was the former ambassador and who is now running for Michigan 7th.
And
we should all talk to her.
Cool. When we come back, I'm going to read the sort of like a live read, Johnny, about the 12th.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
And then I'm going to record a version of this later that we'll post too for them, but I want to do it live on the air.
Nice.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! All right, I want to remind everybody in the Chicagoland area, if you're listening to the show and you're a big fan or whatever, I am coming back to Chicago for a live show on July 12th, Saturday. We'll be doing our regular show at this regular time slot. We'll be at Max and Benny's in Northbrook with Johnny Million. It will, 11 to 1 Central Time. Johnny's going to be there. We've established that during the show. Yes. But most of all, I want to talk with you guys. I would love to have that turn into a sounding board conversation, almost like a live town hall in that regard. So tickets are available now at heartlandsignal.com/WCPT820. And get yours now before they're gone. We basically sold out the place just based on my show, even before the mayor showed up last time. It filled up pretty quickly. So the remote broadcast is made possible by Max and Benny's restaurant, deli, and bakery. And their corned beef is, I was going to say a little slice of heaven, but that sandwich is enormous. You could, honestly, I feel like if you'd have thrown it in between the Titanic and the iceberg, it would have been so soft and moist and delicious that it would have bounced it off. Yeah, it could have saved lives. It's delicious. Yeah. And I look forward to the day when our dear friend Philip Bittner is back in Chicago with us once again, so we can go eat at the Ukrainian. What was the name of the Ukrainian restaurant that we went to?
Tryzub.
Tryzub.
One of the best Ukrainian restaurants in North America.
Tryzub was it was really good. I got to say, Johnny and I were both, I think that was probably our first time specifically eating Ukrainian food. I've had Eastern European food and mixtures of stuff and fusion restaurants or whatever, but this was our first time where Phil took us to Tryzub and we had Ukrainian food, and it was fantastic. If you get a chance, this is not a sponsorship, we're just being lovely. We loved it. It was tasty. Tell them we sent you, and tell them we said Slava Ukraine. That said, it was so good, Phil. And you were like,
restaurant. It's a really good restaurant.
Yeah, right. You can tell he's hungry. Usually, the time schedule being different. All right. So the other thing I want to point out is that while you are seeing a lot of, like AI advancements in warfare because of Ukraine, because of the necessity of it, which scares a lot of people off of it, it's also being used in Ukraine and increasingly in blue states in the United States to pick up slack where funding has been taken away for healthcare and the treatment of injury and rehabbing people and doing all the kind of busy work that often eats up 30% of the funding for something you can expand those services. It doesn't mean you're contracting the people that work there. It means you can expand those services to more people because you're using AI to do it, to categorically try to fit the treatment with the patient quickly. And when it comes to radiology, in terms of broken bones and limbs and traumatic brain injury and illnesses like cancer, the advancements that AI is causing are incredible. And so while everybody's freaking out about this stuff on occasion, I want to remind everybody that there's a very real advancement that's happening on the down low. And it gets more impressive by the week, and I'm very invigorated by that, in spite of the fact that we're being run by some of the dumbest people that have ever been on the planet. That apparently computers are picking up the slack a little bit. That said, let's grab some more questions for Phil before we run out of time, and then I have to race off.
Got one here.
And throw my family into Universal Studios.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
I got one from General Putnam. Given the USA is dealing with a malignant narcissist with dementia planning on withdrawing from NATO, does the Atlantic Council or analogs have clout?
Yeah, look, in the last NATO summit, the Canadians went out of their way to say that even if reading between the lines, even if America does withdraw, that we're still going to maintain a transatlantic alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And Europe is in a post-World War II situation, Mitterrand and come on, Clerk. The Germans and the French basically came together and said, "Look, we're not going to do this anymore." Europe is not the same as it used to be. There are too many ties and interests that interconnect those nation states. Now, is a Finn going to vote for a Spaniard for the president of the European Union? Should such a federation kind of come attempted to come into place? No, but they are not going to go at war with one another. Highly unlikely. But the threat from the East remains. And what the Ukraine war has done has woken up the Europeans to the fact that even if the Italians and the Germans don't have beef anymore, or the Poles and the, take your pick, the Belgians don't have beef anymore, that they're going to somehow start shooting at one another. Those days are past. Europe is a unified entity now. They have too many trade interests with one another, and they will not succumb to Russian dominance, and Moscow likes to divide and conquer. They think that by defeating the transatlantic alliance that they will be able to dominate Europe. I think they're going to have a swift comeuppance, because I don't think that they recognize the change that has happened in the rest of Europe. So yes, I think the Europeans will, with or without the Americans, be able to stand up to Moscow. Not least of which because they're breaking their backs on the anvil that is Ukraine.
Right. Cool. Well, and I think we got time for at least one more, Johnny.
Yeah, here's one more. This is from Facebook, so I apologize. If Russia has North Korean and Chinese army personnel, when should NATO send troops into the Ukraine?
Well,
about 18 months ago.
Yeah, right.
I'm being facetious. Look, active NATO or European troops in Ukraine is going to be a very difficult thing to achieve. There will have to be some sort of major change in the status quo of this war. The French have already said that if Kiev is under threat, that they would supply air support and logistical support. Europe, I do not believe, and some people argue with me about this, but I do not believe that Europe can allow Ukraine to lose. They've got too much vested interest into it now, and they are able to. They got huge GDPs, and their populations are larger, and they're not. Europe will be able to defend itself without America from Russia, not least of which because of Ukraine's resilience. But what does that mean for America? And I think that it's very disappointing that America has gone down this path of thinking that we can be isolationist again, and that Europe is like unable to function without us.
Right.
We're not that's not the way this is going to go down.
Right.
We have time for one more. 3 more minutes.
Yeah, so this is from Chris Stugg. This is the last one I have copied and pasted. How much of the aid to Ukraine is funneled back into the U.S. economy?
Oh, a lot. Oh, a huge section of what we've done is actually we don't send pallets of cash over here. We give that money to Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all those mothballed Bradleys that we have out in the Arizona or New Mexico desert,
Nevada desert. Oh my God!
Yeah,
So whenever you drive from Vegas to LA, there's one of those like military surplus sales points. But they also, over the years, have post Afghanistan and post Iraq, like they kept making these things to send over there. And then as they increasingly stopped sending them, they started building up a stockpile of these things. And some, the ones they would Anything that was low on the, on the Pez dispenser of it, they would remove and sell. But they needed the parking lot, so there were just rows of these, armored vehicles out in the desert. There's a lot fewer of them now, and that's because they were sent to Ukraine, as they should.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys that work in American missile or artillery development production, they're buying new cars because of all of this. So
that's
the
right.
money stays in America.
Yeah,
it's a Republican talking point. Should not be listened to.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Philip Bittner. Don't forget to check out his show On the Edge. New episode every Sunday. This next one is about the legal reforms that are happening. The pushback on the corruption concept that the Republicans like to push on Ukraine, as if it wasn't different when Russia used to sock puppet it. Johnny Million has a show. It's Johnny Million. And of course, you can catch me at infotainmentwars.com, which is the YouTube channel. You can subscribe there today. Help us out. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm also just find @Hal Sparks wherever you get your media, and I will be streaming there. You'll find me. Okay, we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Cool. Excellent. Now let me
Thanks,
hop
guys.
back to thank you, Chicago.
Thank you, Chicago.
Thank you, Chicago.
And Johnny, I'll be talking to you tomorrow to do a little or sometime this week. We'll do a little promo
Maybe
video
Tuesday,
together.
because I'm still traveling tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Tuesday's a great idea because I'll do one as well,
just
but
shoot
I'll make one for both of us, and we'll do it together. And post it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Phil. And this time, by the way, because we don't have to have like everybody in the world there, we'll be able to bring you in remotely on a screen. So I'm going to try and see if we can roll in a big monitor and have you call in.
So cool.
So it'll be live, but people will see there. That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
the beard
absolutely
will be so big.
So it'll be so enormous.
It'll be huge.
It's going to be fantastic. All right.
Oh, yes.
All right. I'll see you. There you go.
All right. Have fun at Universal.
Yep. All right. Thank you
Take
so
care,
much,
guys.
Johnny. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Phil. See you later. Thanks, Chicago. And see you later. And have fun, Johnny, in spite of yourself. All right. They wouldn't even let me say goodbye. They always do that. They always just run off. All right, chat room. It's you and me again. Hi there. Thank you guys so much for being here today. And thanks for the super chats. Thank you, Jen. I will pass that along to him. Phil Bitter, please take care and be safe. Thank you for the information we need to hear as America MSM is useless. Trying to occupy Ukraine is impossible logistically. Agreed, JD Christie. I completely agree. This week, by the way, I'm going to have, it should be all regular shows. And then I think next week, I might have a travel day as I on the 4th, actually, where I'm taking, the fam to see the grandparents, doing that round of things. But other than that, it should be relatively normal, as you do. And what in the world? And let's see. All the way up to the Chicago thing. So fingers crossed. I will let you guys know if we can. We might skip flying on the 4th just because it's crazy, and fly in on the Sunday after it, so I won't miss any shows, and I can just do them from Kentucky, and then we'll be fine. And then we go all the way up to Chicago, and then back, and it'll be crazy pants. And you guys don't need to know this. I'll post it somewhere. I'm going to be updating my website finally. Rob Glenn will be happy to know I'm biting the AI bullet on my website to see if I can create one that manages it well, better than no management at all, I suppose. That said, really appreciate you guys. Love you very much. Have a beautiful day. Take care. I'm going to go spend some time with the fam, and then we drive back to Vegas tonight. Whew. I slept like 2 hours last night. I'm okay.